From I Am Interchange, this is the Hatch podcast series. Beneath the surface of our planet's icy crown lie stories of ancient times, fragile ecosystems, and communities woven into the glacier's icy embrace. These frozen giants, part of the cryosphere, the world's vast frozen regions, are more than just stunning landscapes. They're vital to understanding our climate's health and the future of life on Earth. Yet, they're melting away before our eyes, especially the tropical glaciers, vanishing faster than anyone expected. I'm Tate Chamberlin, and today I explore this icy world with Marcela Fernandez. We'll uncover why glaciers in the cryosphere matter beyond their beauty, and why they are essential to life, culture, and the stability of our climate. And most importantly, what we can do together to ensure these vital ecosystems don't disappear forever. We're at the World Ocean Summit in Nice, France. Join us, won't you? Welcome, Marcela. It's really great to be with you.
It's amazing to be with you, Tate, and let's make the glaciers the real guests of this podcast.
Yes, let's make them the real guests. Speaking of guests, if a glacier went to a party, would it be the coolest guest?
Yes, 100%. Probably it will make people flow as water, you know. Maybe it could seem cold, but if you really get to know him better or her, they will show all the warmth that they have in the heart.
Perfect. What's your relationship to glaciers and the cryosphere?
My relationship starts almost 7 years ago out of ignorance. I didn't know my country, Colombia, had 6 tropical glaciers until I read an article in a newspaper. And that changed my life. It was mentioned that Colombia had 8 glaciers that disappeared the past century, and that we still had 6 left, but they have less than 25 years. And that, for me, was shocking, of course. It removed and moved a lot of emotions. And the first question that I ask myself is, if I don't know, who else doesn't know? And I realized that most of the people didn't know what a tropical glacier was. Didn't know what does it mean that we have glaciers in the equator. Even the word glaciologist. So I'm not a mountaineer. I'm not a scientist. I dropped out of university. My talent is to create multidisciplinary teams around projects and causes. And I really feel that glaciers whispered to my heart and my soul that day that this was going to be it. My project, my north, my mission, my purpose. And I'm thankful because I don't know how would my life be without advocating for them.
You're hosting the Cryosphere Pavilion here at the summit. Can you tell me a little bit about what the cryosphere is?
Yes, the cryosphere is this very important word that it's also not very known. The cryosphere is not only where glaciers live. Glaciers are part of the cryosphere, but also icebergs, permafrost, snow caps, everything that is white, frozen, and in the earth, right? Of course, we associate the cryosphere with the polar regions, with Greenland, with the Arctic, with Antarctica, but there is cryosphere in more than 40 countries in the world that have glaciers. The thing with glaciers is that they have different forms and shapes. Our tropical glaciers are not only tropical, but are also in the Andes. So every mountain range in the world, depending on the altitude, has glaciers. We know the Himalayas very well. We know the Alps, right? So these are all brother and sister mountain ranges that connect through snow in the altitudes. But what's happening is the food of the glacier is snow. And that's how they grow, right? What is happening is it's getting so warm and so hot that they are not having the transformation of the liquid water, which is rain, into snow, which is the form of water that is the food of the glacier. So that's a little bit what's going on. And the cryosphere wasn't even in the dictionary some years ago. Now the decade of the cryosphere has been announced, and starting 2026, it's going to be the decade of the cryosphere. So there's going to be a lot of literacy around this topic, and you cannot love what you don't know. So it's very important to learn and to be curious about it as well. When it rains on top of a glacier, it's worst because it's actually that water, it's making the glacier melt even more, and it's very, very simple. If you're in Nice here and you're having an ice cube in your hand, what will happen? Of course, it will melt faster. If you are inside your house with AC in Nice and you have an ice cube in your hand, it will last longer than the one that was exposed to the outdoors and the heat. So this is a little bit what's happening, and they are very fragile ecosystems that a lot of people, we depend on the water that is frozen. Most of the fresh water in the planet is in the cryosphere, right? So glaciers are not only the thermometers that are showing us the alert that something is unbalanced, that something is happening, but they are also the cathedrals, the temple, the gods of many indigenous communities around the world. So what we are losing is not only sacred snow, but we're also losing gods and the spiritual connection of many communities around the world. In the Andes, for example, we call them apus, and they are the spirit of the mountains.
Is there a part of the cryosphere that's the most sensitive or the most urgent right now?
I believe it depends on how we see it, right? Because if we see it from a perspective of urgency and asking ourselves which ones are going to disappear first, definitely we should be focusing on the tropical glaciers. Countries like Colombia, Ecuador, Mexico even, that has 2 tropical glaciers left. In that way, for me, they are the more urgent. And for me, they are the more urgent because there's a lot of people that really depend on the consequences that will come when we don't have the glaciers. But for other people, the Arctic and Antarctica and Greenland are extremely important because that's a visionary thinking of what's going to happen in years when we really don't have enough fresh water. So we see a lot of expeditions in the polar regions, and that's a place that for a lot of us can seem very far. What can I do for Antarctica? What can I do for the Arctic? What does that have to do with me? And for me, glaciers connect us with what we can actually do in our city. So there are 10 states in the US that have glaciers. And if you walk around Montana or your state, by the way, California, Oregon, and you ask people, do you know how many glaciers your state has? Do you know where is your water coming from? They won't know. So that same ignorance that motivated me to start a local movement in my country is what we are expanding since some years already. The idea that more than 40 countries in the world that have glaciers can create a citizens movement and multidisciplinary team of people where science is the vertebral spine, but we also are in dialogue with athletes, mountaineers, elders, ancestral wisdom, activists, art, music, because this is how glaciers want to speak to us. How can we make that data and the science that can be scary into an emotion that really touches your heart and mobilizes you together with many other people that are feeling this same love, feeling this same devotion, because it's really a devotion.
Is there a number that they've found on the amount of glaciers that are left?
It's around 272,000 glaciers. That sounds a lot. But there's countries that have 20,000. Tajikistan, for example, where it was hosted, the Glacier Conference some weeks ago, has 8,000 glaciers. And 4 countries in Central Asia depend on the glaciers of Tajikistan. And yes, definitely countries like India, China, Alaska, for example, is a territory that is very well known for their glaciers. But I feel that we haven't been able to see the faces behind the glaciers and behind the mountains. The Himalayas, for example, it's more than 8 countries that depend on these glaciers. And we all saw what happened in Blatten, in Switzerland. This happened in Peru or in Nepal much more often. and they never get as viral as the tragedy that was avoided thanks to the amazing monitoring system that Switzerland has. But not all the countries are prepared to evacuate their inhabitants in such a short amount of time, or even to read what the glacier is telling them with the behavior, because glaciers are really spirits, and there's people that dedicate their life to study how they move, how they grow, what is happening, models, mathematical models, or of not only how are they melting, but also what we should do to adapt with these changes that are happening so fast, and what can we do to not fear them, because it's not their fault. It's not that we should fear the glacier. It's that we should be able to listen to what they have to say in a different way. And maybe they are just screaming for us to truly wake up, because we don't have much time. This is the ecosystem that show us that time is sensitive and that they are suffering.
You mentioned that sometimes our relationship to glaciers isn't what it should be. Maybe my language is a little off, but because it's not at our front doorstep like Greenland, and you got specifically inspired by the tropical glaciers in Colombia. Is there a way or a step forward that someone could take that has no relationships to glaciers?
Yes, of course. And I think the first step, it's always curiosity. Go Google. Does my country, Norway, Bolivia, Iceland, I don't know, wherever you live, wherever you are, research. Does my country has glaciers? And maybe you will find a surprise. Okay, yes, my country has glaciers. Who studied them? How can I find them? But the most important thing is that now that answer should be, I want to find Glacier Nation in my country, which is the movement that we started. I want to create Glacier Nation in my country. And that's where I would love that this episode can reach far and can touch people to mobilize and to reach out, because we are on our way in this first ever International Year of Glaciers declared by UNESCO and the United Nations to create that movement and to be able to honor the existence of glaciers in each country that has glaciers. It's not going to be me, a Colombian, activating the glaciers of Bhutan or Tibet, right? But we are joining forces, and how that looks like, for example, here in France, it's called Cime Blanche. In Italy, it's called Cime Bianche. In Africa, which 4 countries have still tropical glaciers, it's called Bilele Biupe in Swahili. And in Latin America, we were able to expand really, really fast. But I think the purpose is, no matter what your talent is, if you feel called for this cause, we can always contribute our gifts, time, talent. When we put them in the service of a cause, it truly gives us meaning. So if you are out there and you feel glaciers are calling you, or if you have already created amazing projects with glaciers, or you have studied them, or you would like to get more into it, please welcome to the Glacier Nation family.
Glacier Nation. What is most misunderstood about glaciers?
I would dare to say that it is a place that has been a little influenced by ego. So mountaineers, hikers, athletes reach the summit. They want to reach the 8,000, right? Or they want to really go to the hardest point. And that's okay. It's a sport. It's an activity outdoor. It puts people into the limit. It challenges your mind. But when we go to these places, we should always ask for permission. We should respect them as sacred lands. So I think if we mix sometimes the ego of the human wanting to achieve the highest level, or the scientists, there's also a lot of ego in the science world because of the paper, who is going to publish, is there going to be funding for everybody? So when you realize this competition sometimes of ego around a place that is everything but ego-centered, that's when I think we contaminate the mountain with our Western way of seeing, success, maybe. So I think that's the first detox that we should do. Leave our ego outside. And that's why we're joining forces from different perspectives, because there's room for everybody. And we need to speak up louder for them. So it's not about big names. It's not about personality. It's not about likes. But the thing is, the influencers should be them, should be the glaciers, should be the water, should be what's going on, right? So that's maybe what I could say about the misunderstanding, right? That is not a place to conquer. The first place we should conquer is our heart.
How does glacier melting affect sea levels, and how do scientists measure it?
Well, I'm definitely not a sea level rise expert, because the consequences that tropical glaciers have, at least Colombia, in sea level rise is very minimum. But definitely this is something that shows us that oceans and cryosphere are interconnected, like all other ecosystems. We tend to see them as separate beings, We even have separate conferences and separate spaces. But one thing affects the other. The fact that sea level is rising is because of the melting of the cryosphere. And there's something beautiful. There's this beautiful metaphor that I would like to share with you, and is what's happening in the glaciers, that they're losing their white in the form of snow. They die, they extinct, they disappear when there's no more white left. Where does that white goes to? And if you see the corals, and we see the bleaching of the corals, when they die, it's because they become white. The bleaching means that they lost their color, and white arrives, and that's how we know that the corals passed away, disappeared, die. So I like to see this as the journey of white and the journey of life and death, and how nature is trying to tell us we are the same, and what we should protect is this biodiversity, right? So definitely small islands are very much affected by the melting of places that they don't even see, that they don't even know exist. And we have been talking about another project inside Glacier Nation, that is, we were talking with the Amazon communities. In Colombia, we have over 20 indigenous communities in the Amazon. Brazil has 365 indigenous communities in the Amazon. And I've been asking some of them, what is your word for snow, glacier, or ice? And they don't have a word. They cannot name them. So imagine the difference if maybe we could connect with these communities, show them pictures, videos, tell them these are the glaciers. Imagine if there is ignorance and lack of awareness in places where we can see the glaciers. It's not that they're ignorant, they know it in their cosmovision, that there is a sacred God, there is this cold, right? But they haven't seen it, they haven't connected with them. So if we could actually name these words, these sacred beings, we could sing to them. And because indigenous communities sing as a form of prayer, we could be actually chanting a prayer. And maybe this is what we need for them to not disappear. Because they will never disappear if there's a way of naming them. Even if there is no more white, or if there's no more snow, there will be a way to sing, to pray. They will always be remembered. And this is something that we are starting to activate. The possibility to interact with indigenous communities around the world, around deserts, around oceans, around rainforest, and say, hey, let's gather and create a word or a name. And I'm sure glaciers will tell them how they want to be called.
That's beautiful. I hadn't thought about glacier not being in a language, therefore it kind of being out of sight. But if it does have a name, then that is very impactful.
And in the other hand, for example, Inuits have 8 different ways of naming them. So there's richness in languages. It's just a matter of connecting with the spirit, and maybe it's not necessary for them to create a name. That's okay. But we can learn a lot from that dialogue and that intersection of ecosystems.
When glaciers melt faster, how does it make climate change worse or better?
Well, they are melting faster as it gets warmer. That's why some of the discussion of not getting to 1.5 or what if we get to 2.7, they will accelerate. So we can actually save the glaciers from melting in a deeply accelerated way. Tropical glaciers, it's irreversible. There's no way back. We've done the damage. But in many other countries or categories of glaciers, we need to prevent global warming from reaching highest temperatures. That's why everything is part of the conversation. Stopping fossil fuels, decarbonizing our economy, reaching net zero, protecting biodiversity. And I think this is something that we can all contribute. We can all stop melting a glacier with our decisions, with our actions, with our vote. We vote every day when we choose. And I believe this is what is needed to also arrive to policymakers with strategies that can legally protect these fragile ecosystems that are speaking through us. So it's really a systemic change that is needed, and it requires the effort of all of us. So I believe it starts with us, but we cannot stop glaciers from melting one straw at a time. It has to be bigger than that. Everything from mining to glyphosate to fracking, everything, all the decisions that are taken against nature are accelerating the melting of the glaciers in a way that we can't imagine.
And the tropical glaciers are first on the chopping block. It's past time that it can be reversed for the tropical glaciers.
They are the martyrs of climate change. We can do efforts of awareness, visibility, making sure that they don't disappear without us knowing that they exist. Our efforts have been also focused in restoring the ecosystem below the glacier, in an ecosystem that is called Páramo in Colombia. It only exists in 5 countries in the world, and there is this endemic plant that we have that is called Frailejón espeletia. It only exists in Colombia, Venezuela, and Ecuador, and it's a plant that can absorb enormous amount of water and can release it when it's needed. Most of the rivers in Colombia are born in this ecosystem. I don't know if you know Wade Davis, but I encourage you to go and find it. He's a Canadian, and he has been speaking a lot about the Rio Magdalena, the Magdalena River in Colombia, but also this ecosystem of the Páramo. And it's unique, it's magical, it's mystic, and it's above 3,000 meters. This plant grows really high, and we realize that this is where the snow of the future will come from, because it creates this humid ecosystem that captures a lot of fog and creates a lot of fog that will eventually become clouds, that will eventually travel and transform into what could be the future snow of the glacier. So this ecosystem is threatened by fires, for example, by mining, by agriculture, by cattle. And what we are working on is making greenhouses, nurseries, to plant these endemic species all over the Páramo, to transform the mentality of the local communities, to invite these communities in the ecosystem of the Páramo, to also understand that by protecting this ecosystem, they're making a huge impact on the rest of the world, because Colombia has an ecosystem that we have to protect for the rest of the world. It can capture most carbon sequestration than any other ecosystem. We truly get creative to protect it. We have created these brigades, so when there are fires provoked by human, we can react faster than the government. We can send to the villages this equipment that is needed for them to be safe and for them to be able to turn the fire. Sometimes it's 300 people in 4,000 meters in the mountain with winds that blow maybe 150 kilometers, and they see this ecosystem burning and they cannot do much. So yeah, it's joining efforts and, in a way, protecting the glaciers from many different angles, including restoration, including preventing fires, and including reacting fast when there's a fire that has been announced.
One of the presentations the other day was an expedition in Antarctica to research ice that's 133,000 years old. Their hypothesis was that they think the ice sheet may have thawed enough to break off entirely. What would this mean if it were true and had happened before?
I think there's a beautiful methodology or experience that I recently had, and it's the deep time walk. I don't know if you've heard of it. It came from Schumacher College, and it's a walk, 4.6 kilometers, that every step you take, it's a representation of years in the planet, in planet Earth. It's hard for me to switch from millions and billions in Spanish and English, but basically we haven't been as humans very long in the planet. We are the last steps of a walk that it's 4.6 kilometers, to give you an idea. And what we have accelerated and created with the Industrial Revolution, it's incredible. We are definitely accelerating what should happen maybe in the natural course of life way longer. The Quero Nation, which is in Peru, they believe that we anticipated 7,000 years to what should be happening to tropical glaciers or to humanity. And the reason why they say this is happening, meaning anticipating 7,000 what should happen later, is because we as humans need to melt emotions. We need to understand that there's feelings like grief, like death, like impermanence, that maybe we should incorporate in our life, and that will make us more humans. So it's not necessarily a way of seeing what's going on as a tragedy. Yes, we need to take action, we need to react, but this is probably what we need to be more humans, to truly connect with our feelings, with our emotions, with what is going on. And feeling these new feelings that are coming, that are arising, will make us find the solution, will make us find our tribe. This is something that pandemia also led us. So I think it is clear that our presence in this planet has affected the natural course of nature, but we are also nature. And I hope we can use our sapiens capacity to be creative, to be innovative, but to think as one. We are water, right? 70% of our body is water. So we are a walking glacier. We are a walking river. We just forgot. We are here to remember how connected we are to this land. And I believe that sometimes data and science can be too much, right? And we are absorbing too much information that we cannot process, information that we don't have enough context to understand. And I love hanging out with glaciologists and scientists. They become today my best friends. Without them, Glacier Nation wouldn't exist. But not everybody has the capacity to have and hang out with scientists that can explain reality with their lenses. But if we also add to these lenses the spiritual component and the indigenous communities' way of seeing this, and if we also add lenses of mountaineers, right? So it's about having a new way of looking and not just be blinded, but by one truth, right? It's finding the common truth that will allow us to find what should we be doing. No, it's asking the right questions and finding the answers, not in the same way we have been looking for the answers.
There is something beautiful about surrendering to who we will become or to what the future will bring.
Yes, I was listening yesterday that in Fiji language, they don't have a word for future. It's connected to the past. They're building the future in the current present, honoring the past.
What are the effects of losing glaciers on people and animals in places like the Himalayas, Andes, and the Arctic, and also the tropical glaciers that you're talking? Do we know what will happen?
Well, the cycle of nature is that when glaciers melt or start melting, and when we are exposed to this dramatic release of more water than what we had before, is that we see avalanches, we see tragedies, we see collapses, because it's like a sponge. It's a like glaciers are really retaining the water and keeping it for the future, no? They regulate the hydrological cycle, but now they are releasing much more than what they normally do. So we will have a time where we will see an abundance of water needing to find its own way, right? But then after this, there will be water scarcity, right? Because they won't be there to provide water when we need it, right? Especially in countries that have seasons. That's what happened. In the summer, they release tons of water, and in winter, they go back to reality and they should be accumulating. But it's what's happening with ski resorts. Unfortunately, ski resorts are a good example to show that what ski resorts are needing to do is to fake snow for people to be able to go skiing and snowboarding. And that's not normal. That shouldn't be the case. And by creating more fake snow, we're using a lot of energy, a lot of water. So that is melting the glaciers even faster because we are creating more emissions, and this is happening for us to be able to enjoy a sport, which I'm not against of enjoying nature, and I love skiing and I love snowboarding, but it's becoming not sustainable at all. If every single ski resort in the world needs to fake snow, it will make that next year we will have less snow because of the amount of carbon emissions that are releasing, because of the amount of energy that is needed. It's something that is not natural, right? So let's take that as an example. What if we could get creative enough to say, let's treat glaciers as our ski resorts, and what can we do so they still stay with us? And it's not necessarily geoengineering, right? It's not faking solutions to make them stay longer with us. It's really this shift that needs to happen, where we need to start consuming less, where we need to understand that there are resources that are limited. And it's time to take care of what we have, not in an apocalyptic way, but in a conscious way.
What are some of the new tools that we're using to study glaciers, and do they have limits?
Satellite images, of course, help a lot, but they're not enough. So there's something called stakes. And the stakes are these sticks that we take into the glaciers to dig them. It's a machine that with a lot of water, you create a hole in the glacier. But it's a very intense process because you need to open a hole in the glacier deep enough so you can put a stick that will allow to measure how much snow is the glacier accumulating. So every time that it snows you can measure the difference between where the stick was at the beginning and where the snow is hitting, and this is a very common way of measuring glaciers. We have taken stakes with us and opened new monitoring ways in tropical glaciers. And it looks a little bit weird because you will see the glacier and you will see sticks coming up. But it's not a negative effect. It's just a way on how it can be measured. Another way that we have been using, it's through the time-lapse cameras. There's a really cool company called N-Labs in Grenoble, and they are donating time-lapse cameras for us to live in the glaciers, and that allow us to see their last breaths. or for some of them are not the last, but for tropical glaciers, they are. So by using time-lapse cameras, we can compare the images. We can see which months there was more accumulation or how much they were losing just by the images. But I'm not a glaciologist. Glaciology has been increasing the different ways in which we can study the glaciers, and these are a way to listen to them. Basically, glaciologists are the translators of glaciers through science. We should definitely honor their work, and maybe next guest can be a glaciologist that can teach us and teach all of us more on how to really study them, because it's a science that it's incredible and has a lot to say.
For sure. Who's resisting you?
It's delicate. I mean, Colombia is one of the countries in the world where more environmental leaders are killed because they defend what they love. So thank God I've never felt that I'm in threat. But I feel it's because we wake up as a movement not to fight. We don't have an enemy. We know there are things that should be done better. We know that there are bad intentions, and we're not naive to that. But we put love first. So we focus on taking care of what we love, accompanying the glaciers in this process. For us, they're like terminally ill patients. And what we do is we take care of them. What's the best diagnosis, and how can we prevent the symptoms? How can really be the nurses and doctors of them? So when we switch the narrative, we also allow our connection to be deeper, right? I think an enemy is definitely greenwashing. We need to stop telling lies to people. Consumer behavior is absolutely important, but marketing that is confusing people, that is manipulating the truth, is taking us to a place where it becomes really hard to find the truth. And if they are using propaganda, and if they are using influencers, so definitely we need to stop telling people lies in greenwashing. So I would say, if there is one thing that I could ask to be different, is if you really want to be sustainable, if you really want to become green, if you really want to contribute to damaging less the earth and the planet as a company, try to do your best and stop doing what doesn't work. Don't tell people that you are an ecological product and that you are really doing something that it's unique out there when it's not truth. So definitely maybe greenwashing is an enemy that is less visible than others, but impacts the behavior and the consumption and the decisions of thousands and thousands of people. And let's give the opportunity to entrepreneurs, to really eco-friendly companies that are innovating, that are doing things different. And that's a way of switching the economy.
Yeah, there is kind of a nonchalantness when people say in casual conversation that they're part of the problem. You know what I mean?
Yes.
If they're part of a company, they're just like casually, oh yeah, I'm part of the problem, I know.
Yes, and I think that's the survivor effect, no? When we live to survive, or when we live to protect our own benefit, that doesn't take us anywhere, right? But I feel that the problem can be solved if there's a will. If there's a will to change, it can happen. And I truly believe that systemic change can also happen from these big corporations that decide to start making things different. And that involves losing money sometimes. It involves shifting completely the way that they are going. And that involves also some of them not existing at all and stop functioning. But how can that happen when consumers understand what is behind the products that we are buying.
What's missing from the story?
I think what's missing is really thanking all the people that are behind Glacier Nation, Cumbres Blancas, and all the projects around the world. There's volunteers that are doing this out of not expecting a salary. And without them, this wouldn't be possible. I also think that what is missing is better access to funding, philanthropy that is truly supporting grassroots movements and guardians of territories and lands. We need to have access to be able to do this full-time job in a way that is dignifying, in a way that we cannot feel guilt to pay ourselves, in a way that is just and fair. We don't have expensive offices and headquarters in most of the most expensive cities in the world. Our headquarters are the territories that we protect. We are able to take care of the resources in a way that will help us take care of the environment much more, right? So I definitely think that if there are ways to support these organizations with resources, with ways of accessing grants or funding, this is a huge support. So if you feel that you can't volunteer to any of these causes or organizations, you can contribute a lot with your capacity to donate. And I really manifest abundance and prosperity, not only for our organization and our movement, but to many leaders and activists and environmentalists that are there, not expecting a salary and needing those resources to be able to do much more, because this is more than a full-time job.
Is it too late for the ocean?
I think it's not too late for any ecosystem. I think we are about time. This time is crucial and critical, and I think it is part of the conversation to be more strategical, right? How can we really make decisions in a way that is not expecting for those high-level people and decision makers to decide for us? So it's time to behave like nature does and unite the different organizations around what we love, but it's not too late. We are on time to make radical changes, and it is the moment where we can choose how do we want to be remembered in history. So it's exciting to be alive. It's exciting to be part of changing the trajectory of the status quo, and we need to believe that we can.
Yeah, on that note, what brings you hope?
Definitely collaborating with people that feel the same way as I do. It gives hope to hear good news about processes and decisions, and I think that needs to be seen much more. Good news, good projects, good initiatives. There's a lot of beautiful things happening that we are not able to reach because they are not visible enough. So every conversation that I have with somebody that is doing something amazing to protect what they love gives me hope.
I'm Tate Chamberlin. We're at the World Ocean Summit in Nice, France, and I'm with the wonderful Marcela Fernandez. Thanks so much for being with me.
Thank you so much for inviting the glaciers, and hopefully this is the beginning of more conversations about the cryosphere.
There's a quiet wonder in watching glaciers slowly retreat, a silent reminder of the profound changes happening around us. These ancient ice formations are more than just stunning landscapes. They're the storytellers of our planet's history, fragile ecosystems, and the communities that rely on their icy presence. They serve as the planet's cold sentinels, silently recording the shifts in our climate, yet they are melting away before our eyes, especially the tropical glaciers, whose vanishing signals a deeper crisis. It's a story that doesn't roar, but whispers, calling us to listen. The choices we make today will determine if the glaciers become distant memories or enduring symbols of resilience. we have the power to shape the future. If we act now, we can help preserve these irreplaceable parts of our world before they disappear forever.
It seems now more than ever that we have found ourselves on the cusp of monumental worldwide change. Whether we consider the environment, politics, infrastructure, health, economics, or inequities across a broad swath of social constructs, the consensus is clear and urgent. All is not as it should be. The United Nations, a consortium of 193 member states from around the globe, agrees. In 2015, the UN unanimously adopted the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs. These goals call for urgent action and global partnership to secure peace and prosperity for people and the planet, now and into the future.
In alignment with the SDGs, Hatch, a curated network of artists, activists, and entrepreneurs working together to accelerate positive global change, has partnered with I Am Interchange to fuse adventure journalism with experiential design labs to develop innovative solutions to complex global challenges. Hey everybody, thanks for listening to the podcast. If you enjoy it, please subscribe or leave us a rating. This episode was produced by Yara Craner, Susan Karstensen, and me, Tate Chamberlin. A shout out to our media and production team, Jessica Byerly, Darko Sevilla, Jacob Desch, Sean Mackinson, Amin Yarsu, and Zane Giordano. With so much gratitude to the Hatch supporters, Steelcase, the Kauffman Foundation, the Gwydion Fund, Envision Equality, the Hatch volunteers, board of directors, Hatch guardians, and the community who help make this work and mission possible. To learn more about Hatch, visit hatchexperience.org. Building community could not happen without food. And with that, I'd like to thank Whistle Pig Korean, Red Tractor Pizza, and Zocalo Coffee House. Do you have an issue that's riddled by gridlock in your community? Shoot me an email at tate@iaminterchange.org. That's tate@iaminterchange.org. Remember, share airtime and don't ruin dinner.